Peace, everyone. Welcome to another installation of Truth Be Told, hosted by Celina Nigel Cordova L. Featuring myself, Aseer the Duke of Tears, is my wonderful, beautiful wife.
Hi, everybody. Nice
Hey,
to see
everybody.
everyone. Let me tell you, boy, this is getting harder and harder. And I say that to say, I cannot tell you how many obstacles from this morning, because we made a commitment to do it today, came into our path to A, deter us, B, make us depressed, break us down, C, make us think that this isn't something that we should be doing, because when there's a lot of obstacles at play and when there's a lot of things that happen to make you feel like you've got to work harder, it kind of makes it uneventful. It makes it really whack. So today is a very special day because I sometimes don't know how to start stuff that's not scripted. Nothing that I do is scripted. I might have an idea of what I want to talk about, but based on the last couple days, I kind of exactly know where I want to go in terms of speaking more about things that I've experienced in order to share and in order to have a connection and have a purpose. You know, so many people talk about things and issues that don't relate to themselves. And yes, we should be private, but what is privacy in a world where everyone is sold through social media, trying to show who they are and what they're about through selfies and pictures, but through no communication, through no verbal tactics? It's pointless. It's like, whose body should we look at today? Who should we look at working out with their clothes off? Like, I got into working out to feel better about myself, and then I realized that everybody's into being a personal trainer or looking like a certified guru of this and that and the other. You don't have to move. And that's what I mean. Our energy affects one another. So I'm gonna sound like I'm jumping sometimes, but that's what melanin does. It's not a streamline of energy.
It's a wave.
It's a wave, and things happen. Like Aseer this week was a lot more cerebral, a lot more quiet, because he has so much more that he wants to accomplish within his own personal self. But thinking about his daughter, thinking about his son, people that we haven't seen in over 10 years now, and it wasn't a lack of love, it wasn't a lack of wanting to be there, it was because someone didn't want him to be a father. It was because the women that he had them with don't want to confront maybe issues within themselves that makes it so difficult for all of them to sit down together. But if they could entertain the notion of being together, then why not take responsibility for what was created during that time? Because people change. Things change on a dime. I was talking to him the other day about having a clear idea of what I see, of what I want to do, of what I want to put forth. But the more I want to do that, the more the environment sometimes challenges us and challenges me to either say yay or nay. Perfect example. I talked to a friend about babysitting. He's a great guy. Started hiring for babysitting. He watched Amore for about a month. Various times during the day, 2 hours here, 2 hours there. But I wanted to express and share this because as much as we attracted each other, for him to make a little extra money and for us to have a moment together as a couple, and for Amore to be able to spend time with somebody else other than mommy and daddy, it was a great connection. As soon as we connected, 2 weeks into us having a great reunion, he got into a car accident. His back started hurting. He wasn't able to play with Amore as much. We had to focus on, going to chiropractic sessions. He's thinking about moving back to New York. All of these things to even though we came together and said this is what we're going to do for the next 6 months, life takes place and it sometimes throws you off of what you and that person want to accomplish. The same thing, right? The same thing. Sometimes I'll have in mind, like, okay, I spoke to this person about what I hope to accomplish with them, how I feel about them, what I'd like to experience in terms of communication, in terms of whatever, and they're like, yeah, You know, let's definitely talk every so and so. I feel the same way. I love you, this, and the other. But in translation, I might not hear from them for months. We might have to be confident enough to know that unconditional love is a choice. It really is a choice, because when you say unconditional, you have to remember that unconditional love is when you love something without an expectation or a requirement back. You just decide to love that person or that thing unconditionally, meaning that you don't need them to say, hey, I love you the same way. You don't need them to hug you as much as you hug them. You don't need them to give. And that is a very powerful thing when you say, I'm willing to unconditionally love you. When I say that, which I have to only maybe 2 or 3 people, what it means for me is that I love who they are in the world so much that I'm going to choose to send them love and to send them attention regardless of what they give me back in return, regardless of what I get. And that's difficult, because when you give someone love, when you give someone clothing, shelter, attention, there are certain things that you hope to get back. But hoping is just that. It can be a desire, it can be a passion, it can be an emotion. And women, because we are emotional, sometimes we think that because we love someone, whether it be a child, a sibling, a man, that they're gonna love us the same way. And that's just not what love is. That's not what unconditional love is. You can choose to love someone, but say, hey, I want you in return to be able to give this to me. And then that type of love has a condition. That type of love has a responsibility, because you expect a return or a charge back from whatever it is you're putting forth, whatever it is you're giving. So I bring up my babysitter to say we had a great plan as to what we wanted to accomplish together. And then about 3 weeks into us accomplishing those goals, things became subterfuged. His energy was headed for by other things. He not only got into a small car accident, but thank God he's not really hurt. You know, his test came back clean, his back is fine, but it had a mental effect on him. I saw more mental change than I did a physical. He was a little slower, he was a little less spontaneous, and was actually probably a little saddened, because he's used to being at a certain energy high, and now he had to be challenged in that. It's the same thing. I'm watching my son a lot. It's a great example. I'm watching Amour really like the energy of family, of like extended family. Right now, he's around the bend with a grandma and a grandpa who came to see our neighbors. And we know our neighbors because they have a little girl, so we've been very sociable. But, you know, sociable is different than eating dinner together, than hanging out every week. It's sociable. And I'm teaching Amour to be sociable to everybody that is positive and that seems like they're giving us smiles and can say hi to mommy and daddy. That's a great thing. But what Amour is actually seeking is a consistent charge from a family. And we are family, mommy and daddy. But because it's just the two of us, and he's a Leo with other energy, with a Libra rising and a Virgo moon, he is actually very cerebrally trying to attract something that he can almost say is his. So none of these families are his. None of the people that he sees every day and every week are his, other than mommy and daddy. But the way I was raised was with a huge extended family. And even though we separated after my mom passed, every Sunday, the members of my family got together and ate dinner, thanks to my grandmother. And this is what I mean, like, what happened to tradition with us as black people, with us as melanated people? And I say as black folk because that's what we call each other. That's the term of art that's used here in society. But I even like to challenge our viewers and say, what do we do as people that were born here in America, of this color, of this creed? How do we keep certain traditions alive when a lot of our elders that require those traditions to be there passed and
Just didn't
tell us, and the members that are left over are not as aware of the power of a consistent tradition? And that's what happened to me. I started talking And it's weird because I told Aseer, I was like, yo, as soon as I start talking about my sister, watch what happens. And if you guys have been following, I shared just some personal stuff because I don't know how else to grow other than to address things that I feel were lessons for me. And so many, oh, don't put your business out there, girl, and oh, you telling too much. Who are you going to learn from if it's not to dissect your own situation, if it's not to think and figure out what you came here, what your given circumstances were? Everything is so private, but women are willing to show everything on camera. So what is a sliding scale of privacy? To me, I want to not front. And I'm also using this forum. When I saw, I check comments and I write, our listeners back. And as I'm seeing how many people are taking the time to comment and to make amazing points, it's allowing me to see that I'm not alone. And it's allowing me to realize that what I'm saying holds weight, even though this is not popular. This is not popular to talk and to reveal, things about yourself, things about your family that always don't shine in the greatest of lights. I love my sister dearly. I wanted the best for us after my mother passed, but I'll take a quick moment to just talk about our given circumstances so people understand. Because a lot of people don't know the story of what happened with Micaela and I as to why I've chosen to not allow her to only have a relationship with me and her nephew through Facebook. That's something that might be comfortable for her, but because I know her, it's like, why would you Facebook me when you can call me? Why would you Facebook chat when we grew up in the same room for 19 years of our life? And you should have the strength or the flexibility to be more to me than a Facebook friend. I don't want her in my life as a Facebook friend. I actually wanted my sister in my life as a friend. But we grew up with so many energetic and differences based on my mother leaving California after my parents divorced. We moved to New York around, I was 6, my sister was 8. We lived with our grandparents in Bushwick. It was a great upbringing, but my sister really didn't like New York as much as I did. I found some culture and I plugged myself into a lot of dance. Alvin Ailey, Dance Theater of Harlem. It was great for me, but my sister didn't enjoy anything really in New York socially like that. So I have to think about, what about my life represents an obstacle for her, or what about me living was kind of problematic in watching us grow up. I always think about where I'm at, but I had to really step outside myself the other day and go, wow, what it must have been like to have a little sister who was in your reading group because she read as well as you did. Or, we're 2 years apart. But growing up, you always want to be like your big sister. And for me, I only had her to really relate to. So when she started learning how to read, I wanted to learn how to read. When she took dance class, I wanted to go to dance class. So my mother enrolled us in all of these things together, and she ended up not pursuing or continuing them, and I did. I remember my mom telling me, oh, she hated when you went to her reading class. And I could see why. That might have been her moment to shine, to have her friends as a first grader. And who wants their little sister to come to their first grade reading group and read with them? From a very young age, she might have seen me as an energetic challenge. Everything about us is very opposite. I'm brown skinned, she's light skinned. I'm a little thinner, she's a lot thicker. I have long hair, she has short hair. It's always the way it's been. But I thought growing up with my sister that we could find a way to love each other and we should be besties. But the more I tried pushing my agenda, which was come outside and play with me, let's ride our bikes together, let's go bowling together, the more she was like, ugh, I don't want to go, I'm staying home, you do you and I'll do me. And that's how it was. I have no reason to lie. That's how it was. My mom was my sister's best friend because they did everything together. That might have been great then, but I started seeing little things like, my sister, can I borrow your scarf? I'm getting soaking wet. I got it, baby, thank you. But it's to say, everything that we did, I kind of maybe forced her to want to do with me. And, sometimes you have a sister or a sibling who's just annoying, and sometimes that older, sibling really wants to hang and really wants to be with you. And it wasn't like that for me. My mom was aware of stuff, but she was like, maybe it's because we got divorced, and my mom kind of benefited from my sister being her best friend. They did a lot of stuff together. They hung out a lot together, and it was great, But for me, I found a social niche. I found ballet. I found point class. I found tap. And I stuck myself there from 3 o'clock after school till 8 o'clock in the evening, till 7 o'clock at night. And I made friends in that arena. So for me, I always tried being a lot more involved in my sister's life up until like the age of 15. Then I attracted a boyfriend in high school, and we kind of came together in the same living space in the evening, but we never hung out. As much as I tried, we never hung out together. So fast forward the story a couple years, my mom, she's a very healthy person, but if I remember telling the story about her being on a naval base that was irradiated and her already having hip issues, after that, her hip just started to disintegrate and feel horrible. So years pass, we're in college, finally my mom can get her hip fixed. She goes to the hospital for special surgery for a routine hip replacement that was actually just the ball and socket so that it wasn't grinding. And she was over-anesthetized. The doctor over-anesthetized her. She was pronounced brain dead. And
they tried to cover it up.
They did try covering up the whole procedure, but they tried covering it up. It was considered malpractice, and the doctor admitted to the problem. So once a doctor admits to malpractice, it's no longer a malpractice suit. It goes into settlement. So we were in a space of settling, and the reason why I wanted to slow him down was because I sometimes have a train of thought, and based on us being partners, he'll say something that will remind me of something else. The malpractice was huge, but I'm right now wanting to stay committed to the story of my sister. Imagine 2 weeks away from college graduation. This is where my sister was. And my mother was pronounced brain dead in a hospital that we never thought she would not walk out of. So what happened to her was that she started going crazy. And I watched it, and I started to feel like I could go crazy in a minute, because key things happen to us in our life to somewhat tip us over the edge and to drive us a little batty. And that was one of the first huge things. How does someone graduate? She was graduating from Mount Holyoke. She was 21, I was 19. I was a sophomore, she had graduated college. I went to my sister's college graduation a week after we buried our mother. Can you imagine where she was, having her best friend buried, her mother, and us then having to switch gears and go to school and pack her stuff up? And at the time, it was horrific, because what happened to us the night of my mother's funeral is we were kicked out of our living space, out of our home, by my uncle Emilio, by my grandfather Rupert, by my uncle Armando, and by other members of my family that didn't feel strong enough to tell them not to kick us out. I have 6 aunts and uncles in total. My aunt Amelia was a nurse. All of my uncles are electrical engineers, extremely brilliant men, but they are Masons. That being said, Aseer will elaborate, but when you're a Mason, you make an oath, and with that oath, what happens energetically is it creates a separation between the man and the woman. That's just what it does, and I know because I watched it in my own family. My grandfather and grandmother were married for years, but what's interesting about my family story is that all of the women were healers, nurses, really smart women, and all the men were electrical engineers. I fast forwarded to say, my aunt, one of my amazing aunts, my godmother, emergency room specialist, nurse, worked for Bellevue for 20, worked always, brilliant woman. She attracted a man in her life that was very abusive, who physically beat her face up, where she would have to come to our home and my mother would say, you can't go to work like this. But she got real good going to work bruised up. Now what about a woman, or what about her upbringing when you see a man and a woman being raised in love, what about her was disgruntled enough to attract someone who put her through the ringer like that?
And her children.
And her children. You know, I have a lot of cousins that I have not seen since my mother died. And what's sad and tragic about that is that we were all raised together. My cousin Russell, my cousin Shamika, Sekou, who I taught how to read, we were all in the same household, being raised together. And because my aunt was always at work, my cousin Russell was always in my home. He was always there. My mom always looked after him because, you know, if you have an abusive husband, the chances of that child being abused are very great. And that happened to my cousin. And it was horrible. No young boy should be beat at all, much less by a man that's not his father. So what that must have done to him conditionally is horrible. And I bring that up to say, on the night of my mother's funeral, she had a living will. She chose to be cremated, but my uncles and my grandfather wanted my sister and I to release her body so that she would have a living wake where people would be able to come and pay their respects and their homage. But my mother didn't want to be buried in a church. She didn't. So that went against everything that my grandparents, my grandfather wanted to show off to the church that he paid so many tithes to. So he had this funeral. We went to the church. There was no body in the casket. And that was annoying to them. But more than that, I come home from the service. My grandfather calls me and my sister downstairs. I happened to be with, my first boyfriend at the time. So Chamin was a witness to all of this and what this might have done to a young man to see who he thought was loving to us be the exact opposite in a couple hours. Come downstairs, Celina, Michaela. We come down. Girls, sit down. Some things are going to be changed around here. First of all, here goes the bill to your mother's funeral. That was given to us. Sit there with like an $8,000 bill.
This is the night of the funeral.
The night of the funeral. So we're sitting there. My uncles decide to talk to us about, you girls are in school. Your mom didn't pay a whole bunch of rent up in here. We're thinking it'd be best if you guys find another place to stay and move on. You're in school. Your sister's so-and-so. We want to rent out this space. This is what we hope to do. Y'all never paid your respects the way you should. Like, paid my respects. I'm 19. I'm an A student in college. I'm not pregnant. I've never stolen anything. What do you mean I can't stay where I've been for the past 16, 17 years? My grandfather's sitting there quiet. Don't have nothing to say. Grandpa, how can you let my uncles... So right at that moment, I decided to let my mouth do the talking. I said, well, since we all trying to save face and speak about the truth, why don't we talk about Emilio and the fact that he has 3 children out of wedlock? We don't know our other cousins. If everybody's trying to act so perfect, why don't we know the cousins that you both birthed? Why is it that your wife is drinking herself into alcoholism every night? These are the problems in black families that don't want to be talked about. So as my uncle, that really paid mansions in Harlem, Range Rovers, Land Rovers, your mother ain't shit, she don't have no money. But we're the first 2 to graduate from college out of 14 grandkids. So my mom had goals, but it's to say that when you don't have money, when you don't have material wealth, sometimes people here will rip you down. And I watched that happen. So I fast forward the story and saying, I decided to, with my cousins there, with other people there, say, well, Emilio, I know about the kids because my mom and grandma told me about them. But mind you, when my grandmother died, she had an aneurysm in church. Peep this story. She left $150,000, maybe more, to all of her grandkids. What my grandfather decided
And the
house. What my grandfather decided to do was take the $150,000 and split it only amongst the men in the family. All of the boys got money, all of the women did not. These are my aunts. 2 years later, my mother and aunts are aware that all this money has been spent, houses have been bought, cars have been purchased, a whole lot. And what does my mom and aunts do? They're aware of it, but they stay quiet as a means to respect the elder men in my family and to also not, be all about the money. If that's what they decided to do, then great. They never read the will out loud. I say all this to say, when we got kicked out of our house, the people that I thought were there to show me love, to be a support system to us, quickly became enemies, quickly became people that did not seem like they were filled with love. They asked us to leave the house. It became a huge family brawl where I remember the cops were called by neighbors. Because, you know, we weren't flagrant black folk like that. So now to see cops in front of the building, it's like, well, what's going on? Well, we got kicked out of our house. So I'm staying with my Aunt Amelia. This is the one who has the abusive husband, for like a week before I go back to school. And the decision at that time was either you're gonna move with your aunt to North Carolina, or you're gonna finish school and figure out your life on your own. And I'm gonna keep it real. Based on that abuse that night, I left that night, came back a couple days later to collect my things in the house that I grew up in Bushwick, and the locks on the door were changed. Not even, my mother's body was not even cremated, and the locks on the door were changed, and it was a Rizzy. I couldn't even go in to get my clothes of 18 years. So that to me was a sign of not being welcomed. And I kept it moving. I went back to school. I was like, Mika, F these people, we're gonna take care of each other. So I, at that time, really was gonna be there for my sister and decided to be there for her. Invited her to Syracuse, invited her to come abroad with me to London, stayed with me for months on end, helped her lose weight, helped inspire her, helped her through her grieving process. But as I'm helping her, I've got to be strong.
Who helping you?
I can't cry. I can't break down every day. I can't act like this isn't something that I had to be strong. That took about 2 years. I graduated with my class on time. I finished school. I finished graduating, Syracuse. And I remember I was like, okay, I can either go to Cali and pursue this acting job, or I can move back to where I'm from, Brooklyn, help my sister find a place to stay, and we can be family, because that's what we are. So I did that. Everybody I knew I introduced her to. Imagine being socially a little handicapped. That is where my sister came from. A little social handicapness. And I'm here, I'm trying to help her with everything, introduce her to my friends, take her out, let's go dancing, and we enjoyed that for about 2 years. But to fast forward some more, I meet Aseer. My first boyfriend leaves me. He leaves me for another woman. And that story's funny, and how I figure out things and the stuff that's discovered through this. It's hysterical, on how that even went down. But the point is we're living together in Brooklyn. I attract Aseer in my life. How I even attracted him was crazy, because everything in our relationship that I've realized is very much a choice. I made a choice to be with him. He made a choice to be with me. And we chose to be each other's family. So sometimes that's got a greater responsibility than being lovers, than coming together for romance, for all of this. Because as I'm going through this, I, meeting him, realized that his mother and family are a little out with him as well. How do I think that? No mother. I met his mother the first couple of hours that we knew each other. She said everything about him negative that she possibly could. Oh, that pretty boy mother effer. Oh, that nigga think he all of that. Or this pimp. Well, did he tell you about this? And you know he got 2 baby mamas, right? And you know, well, that motherfucker. All of that showed me that he was in an abusive relationship with his mom. Because being raised by my mother, I could have done the worst, and my mother would not have told anybody those negative things about me from the gate. So I'm learning all this, and I'm going through life, and I attracted someone after being, my best friend and my boyfriend leaving me. But who wouldn't leave someone who had all this baggage given to them? I have to say that too. Who wouldn't want to use a woman who was willing to buy them a condo and a house and ship them off with sneakers? And that's what happened to him. And he took the bait. Whatever his journey was, he took the bait, and that allowed us to separate. You might call me for healing because you're doing too many ecstasy pills or whatever, and that's what Celina's good for, to help you, but not to be there when I really need. So, needless to say, I'm living with my sister. I meet Aseer. I want to get my own place. I look it up in Craigslist, end up asking a couple friends, oh, we got an apartment for you. I move into an apartment 10, 15 blocks away from my sister. She's on Washington. I'm on, what's the street?
Carroll.
No, I'm on St.
James.
No. New York Avenue. Excuse me, I like getting things right. I'm on New York Avenue, 354 New York to be exact. My first apartment that I chose was around the corner from where Aseer's mother and where Aseer grew up. So what's the probability of that? That one day we meet up, he's walking me home and he's like, you live here? Oh, my mom lives right around the corner. I'm like, I know your mom. She stopped me a couple times to hook me up with some, some thrift clothes. And she's like my size, 5 foot, size 6 shoe. He's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, I think I know her. As soon as his mom and I introduced, we met officially. As soon as Aseer introduced me to her, she knew me already. That's when it was all wraps. Oh, well, you can't. So you got to understand, when a mother talks that bad about their child, what that said to me was that this woman wasn't all healthy. I'm going to keep it 100% real. So other things were revealed about Aseer, and I chose to be a support to him at that time and to myself because he chose to be there for me at a time when no one else was. So we're all working together. My sister, Aseer, another brother named Jamal, all in this nice little apartment on Washington Avenue, right up the block from the museum. So I'm like, Mika, I'm moving in. It was horrible. It was like, I understand you don't want me to move in on my own. I understand that you don't want me to get my own place, but I'm 21. I'm a virgin. I'm 21. I want to live a little. I want to breathe a little. I don't want to feel like I have to take care of you my whole life.
I don't want to be your mother.
And I don't want to be your mother when we had a mother. Even though it was taken from us at a tumultuous time, she taught us everything that we needed to know up until that time. And I have to be confident in saying that everything happens for a reason. So, we're all working together. The book that Aseer wrote is called The Dark Scope 418. We were trying to get it printed in 2001. We were trying to get this book printed. Thought it would go down well. We would all have little meetings in my sister's house. It was me, Aseer, Jamal, and Micaela. We'd have great meetings. So as we're all getting close and, coming together, we realized after one of the meetings that my sister's acting real out with this brother Jamal. So I confront her and go, Mika, did you have sex with Jamal? I don't want to talk about it. Micaela, you know about me. You know everything that I've done. What is going on with your energy with this brother? She kind of shut down. I went to Jamal. Jamal confirmed. Yeah, I hit it. I smashed. I'm like, whoa. Not only I know that this was probably the first guy, but we all knew Jamal's girlfriend at the time. She might not have lived in the same state, but we knew of her. So I didn't know why my sister would put herself in a situation to be in a sexual relationship, one of the first sexual relationships with a guy that couldn't or might not be able to be there for her. So right at that time, the argument started to pursue. I was like, look, we need to talk. I want to talk to you. She stopped answering her phone. She stopped getting at me. She stopped inviting us over. We had cell phones all together. I wanted to pay my cell phone bill one week. Go over to her house for the bill. She hands me the bill through the door because she's not talking to me right now. She doesn't want to talk. Sometimes people need time to process the fact that someone else has discovered something about them. I didn't think discovering about sex was that huge, but it was huge for her. So she's not communicating with us anymore. She's handing me the bill for our cell phone through a slot in the door, and I'm like, yo, why are you so, Mika, open the door and let's talk. I don't want to talk. Respect my wishes. Fine. She hands me the bill. Don't you know the woman cut out the account number so that I couldn't call and handle my bill on my own? I would still have to give her money. Again, being controlling when I'm asking to handle my own affairs. I didn't think that my sister should be controlling then. I have my own money. Why won't you let me handle my own affairs? She didn't want me to because that took away from her control and her power over what she thought she was doing for me. To speed it up a little bit, after that interim, that became horrible. He's like, hurry up. After that, I'm gonna edit it on camera. This is what I mean. I'm not working for anybody.
I know.
I don't want to feel pressured. The point is that 10 years passed after that one weekend. I didn't speak or see my sister for 10 years. I was with him for 10 years and didn't see her. I remember a couple times I saw her drive past the block. I remember this day I was barefoot, sitting on our street. I was like, oh my God, that was my sister. I jumped up off the block, ran down the street, barefoot and braless. Bang on the door, on the car window, Mika. She rolls up the car window. My grandfather is sitting right next to her.
Same one that kicked you out
Same one that kicked us out the house. Now, the story was lengthy, but what I wanted to get to was that my sister, during those 10 years of separation, decided to go and move back to the household that asked us to no longer be there.
All your friends that she met through you.
More than that, if you're going to say it, speak up because they can't hear you. So what I was going to say was, she, during that time, went back to my uncle's, my cousins, and my grandfather's home and decided to live with them. The same people that didn't want to have anything to do with us. And what that did was it gave permission to the grandparents, to the grandfather and my uncles, that whatever they did to us in the past was okay. That they were forgiven for their acts because my sister allowed that feeling to take place by her going back to the abusers, whether it was to ask why, whether it was to move back in and help. When I find out that someone doesn't want to have anything to do with me and they're abusive to me, I don't go back to the abuser to find out why. I just don't. I never did. So that's a little bit opposite of what my sister did. How do I find all this out? I had a baby. Of course I'm wondering where my sister and my father is. So I find my father through name searches in Arizona, call him. What does he tell me? Oh, your sister's been staying with me for the last, month or so. Micaela? I haven't spoken to her in years. I would love to. Where did she go? Finally, she gets on the phone. We talk for the first time after 10 years. She decides to come out to Miami to see me and to meet her nephew. At that time, I decide to find her an apartment because I know she don't want to live with my father. My father was never around. But rather than get into that, we decide to get her an apartment right 4 or 5 blocks away from where we are. Lent her money, massage tables, rice cookers, moved her in. But mind you, during those 10 years, there was a lot of missing time. I get to see her and talk to her. During that missing time, my sister reveals to me that she was very angry with me for choosing another man over her. That's not how I saw it. But again, I cannot control how someone internalizes my actions. The same way I can't control someone else's actions. I find it interesting that out of all the people that we feel close to are, his brothers, I feel very, very close to, regardless to who or what. They're my son's uncles, and they're young enough to somewhat know us without all the other drama. But Aseer told me, if they wanted to come out here, they would make moves to come out here. Amor is 5. What did you say?
What you just said. Exactly what you just said. If they want to come out here, if people want to come out here and see him, they'll do that. But that should be something that your family picks up emotionally, the responsibility to say, well, that's what I want to do. But what I notice is that when you are the culturally significant one in the family, sometimes it kind of freezes other family members with you. So this don't say that they don't support or anything. That's not really that. It's just that people support based on their own level of involvement. So some people's level of involvement with you or me or Celina or anybody else is going to be just enough. You know what I'm saying? However, in my relationship that I've been in for all of these years with my wife, what I know is that we've never had the luxury just to do the bare minimum. If anything, this life has shown me that if I don't push through, if I don't do it, regards to what I feel that I should have in terms of family support, community support, friend support, it don't matter. It's not going to get done. Because in the very end, like I said, people discover their own level of involvement and will sometimes do just enough to say that they're doing something. But that's not exactly what the situation or the family may really need. It may need somebody to actually stand up and advocate for you. It may be something, like Celina was talking about my mother and my grandmother and stuff. Like, they were never supportive. They were supportive as making sure that I had food, clothes, and shelter. But emotionally, psychologically, it was always a gambit as to see how much internalization and emotional responsibility they could put on me and how much I would retain. But that is not just significant or synonymous to me as Aseer. This is a problem in our overall community here. Is anybody that's been a man who's grown up to be a man here and came up under the quote-unquote single mother syndrome, you already know all the issues you're dealing with. I ain't got to tell you. You already know. And regards to how much women, want to put out there that, the things that happen to them is, how much is hard, when a woman doesn't have a father and this and that. As a man, as a young man child growing up to be a man, one thing that nobody really expresses to you or even asks you or even starts to build with you on is what you as a man would like to see yourself be when you grow up. You don't have that luxury, especially when you're melanated, especially when you're about bringing forth something better out of you. You're not given the option. At least our people are not. They are not given the option. They have to take it. You have to literally take the option to do you. Because if you don't, you will be forced to conform to whatever it is they want you to be. So because I didn't want to rape people, literally rape people financially and through the legalese system, even though I passed the bar, you know what I mean, to be a quote-unquote an attorney or whatever. When I chose not to go that route, what I was also saying was that I'm not going to be like the people that I saw my queen grow up with, meaning her grandfather, her uncles, and all of them, who were not maybe lawyers, but they were a part of an organization that forced them or that made them feel that they needed to be a part of a fraternal organization. And in my family, it was the reverse. The women were the so-called Eastern Stars and witches or whatever, and the men were not. So again, ritualistically speaking, I learned so much about what to look for in terms of people. Like we as black people, we don't even, when I say black again, I'm talking about triple stage darkness black, we don't even sometimes do the knowledge that we come from a culture where our own people put roots and shit on us. We come
and that
from
can be generational.
And that's generational.
That's generational. I told him today, I
that's
said,
real.
I really hate to say this, but people that are striving to be more than just the average nigga, the average black, we're gonna feel cursed.
Yep.
You're gonna feel like the world is against you at times because the status quo is for you to fall in line. And the line that exists is not one that I want to stand on. I want to create my own that doesn't have all the psychic, karmic trauma and pain, but that might not be supported by the greater whole. The same thing, I want my sister to know what it feels like to have something of her own at 39 and to not house hop from person to person to person. When I did talk to her, she had lived with over 20 people in like the last 10 years because there's a part of her that's looking for that community family that we grew up with, but it's no longer there.
Don't exist.
So then I help create a space because that's what she says she wants. She stays here for a month or two, and right before my son's birthday, I'm gonna have to find out that you moved out the state through a stranger that you subletted your place to when I was gonna, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, but as she was sitting in my living room, and I was like, Mika, what did I do to you? I didn't do anything to you over these 10 years. She, in her mind, This is where you have to be aware of mental
Deficiencies.
deficiencies and how people go crazy. You know, we don't talk about mental illness in our community and in our family. And I watched it. You know, this is why I have my doctorate in holistic science and why I took time maybe to study about psychology and the triggers of what happens to the human mind when you are in pain, when you are depressed, what that does to your serotonin levels, what it does to your body, all of these things. I'm watching my sister try to figure out what I did to her. And during that missing time, she created for other people that she had to tell a story about me too.
Yep.
She created that I stole earrings from her, that I was abusing her, that the abuse was that I beat her up. The day that I came for my cell phone bill, I beat her up. When really what I did was kick the door in and grab my goddamn bill off her table and look at her and say, "You're playing yourself." That's what I did. And I must have put the fear of God in her. Because after that day, she moved, the phone was changed, she didn't talk to me for 10 years. And what happened to me during that time? I felt alienated. I felt a little alone. I was wondering where she was. I was on the Chase Mika syndrome. It wasn't until I had a kid that I stopped chasing her. It wasn't until I confronted her and say, "But if I stole your earrings, how did you get them back to pawn?" She laughed. "Well, you must have returned them." And I said, "I never took them, Mika. You created this to have a reason to hate me and to stay silent for those 10 years. But when we were all together, she would flirt with Aseer. She would talk to him about personal things. So he must not be that bad a guy if you, outside of me, are trying to secure a space with him." But you know that's how I actually found Aseer, was I was living with a girl. She was a Libra, funny enough. I was living with this girl, I'll just call her Woo. And at the time I was working for a real popular RBG rap group. That RBG rap group, it was great to tour and to travel with them for a little while. But you already know, if you're not the sex pot, if you're not drinking, and if you're not somebody to be trusted with sex, you probably aren't going to be on tour with brothers for a long time. So I wasn't in that sexual space, and maybe my presence was a little threatening to them and their wives, and I didn't get to tour with them for more than like a season or a year, let's say. During that time, my roommate knew that I was touring with them. She was a fan of theirs. And she told me, she was like, "Watch, I'm gonna meet this dude. I'm gonna give him a reading, a little astrology reading." And mind you, she wasn't even doing astrology readings, yoga, nothing until I walked through the door. But I didn't own my worth then. I didn't know what my value, I didn't know what I brought to the table at 21. I really didn't. I was smart, but there was a part of me that was just so full of love and life. I was unaware that some people saw that as a means to feed off of. And what this young woman would do, she would steal every moment I might have been seen as a cool chick and made it about her. So if I'm making a whole dinner that night and invited people over, she gonna put on the cooking gloves and stand in front of the pot when people are there and hand out the dishes.
And act like she cooked it.
And she didn't cook nothing.
Nah.
She wouldn't cook nothing. And you know what he did? After maybe a couple months of her playing this game, he called me one day and was like, "Yo, I want to let you know that I peep game."
I peep what's going down. I see what she doing.
I said, "You see what?"
She trying to be you, but act like you're trying to be her. That's what I saw.
I said, how can you tell that? Her
Based
jokes.
on the fact that her jokes, her mannerisms, how
everything
she talk,
that I did.
how she do.
It's like this girl, but mind you, the girl was a little older than me. Woo was about 2-3 years older than me. So her whole thing was acting as though I moved into her space and I needed her to validate who I was. Like she was a big sister. When really I didn't know her from a hole in the wall. I just knew after moving in with her, she came from a large family, and why wouldn't I not want to give some clothes to her sisters? She came from siblings of 13 or 14 people. You okay, Amor? Okay. So, you know, for me, if I have it to give, I'm going to give. But I didn't know that I kind of looked like a herb or,
No,
like or an easy come up at that time. So, funny story with this is, we had inherited about, you know, the money that I talked about losing. Why is it that my sister, and this is what I'm talking about when somebody in your family misrepresents you or talks about you in a light that you don't want to be seen in? My sister, for a couple of years, all she would do is meet people. Hi, nice to meet you. Do you know that my mother died and this happened and Celina and I, and you just met this girl, Woo. Why did you tell her I had $400,000 in a bank account that I'm not even using? Well, I didn't think that it was problematic, and she's talking about astrology, and I said, yeah, but I'm studying astrology. I go to Queens every Friday to study with Myra. I'm doing these things. Why would you start relationships from a place of victimization? Why do you keep telling my friends that I'm trying to build relationships with about all the drama at the gate?
Because so-called black people bond through pain.
I get it. But when I know you, maybe we can get to a point of talking on that intimate level. Or when I choose to in a forum like this. But I say that to say, right after this woman found out I had inherited money, she all of a sudden don't have no job, stopped paying rent. I paid her rent, her portion of the rent, for about 6 months. Because during that 6 months, I was on a mission to find another place to live. And during that hunt, this same woman, Woo, was like, oh, well, where we moving to? Where are we moving? Honey, I ain't moving nowhere with you. I'm going to move on my own. Because I probably could have right now, but I decided to not bite off a whole lot, bite off a little. And during that time, it's like everything that I tried to keep private was being made public and was almost being used against me. So trying to help an RBG group at the festivals, oh, Celina just paid for it. When
Meanwhile,
really,
these niggas got $1 million in the bank.
Meanwhile, I am using my money and not this $400,000 that they might have thought, because Woo is telling everybody that I have this money and that I'm this spoiled, naive girl. Whatever the case may be, I was not comfortable starting my relationships off with telling people things that my sister was. So that became argumentative. I ended up asking her not to do certain things that she felt she could do, and we separated. I cannot tell you how, when I found out my sister moved from the 3-block apartment that we got her, that it was really hurtful.
What's the moral, though?
The moral is, you cannot make people do what you want them to do. You cannot chase people that don't want to be caught. You cannot make someone see you for who you really are. You cannot convince someone to love you the way that you love them. You cannot impose your will on other people, period. And that's difficult because in family, there's almost certain things that are almost automatically supposed to be and supposed to be there. So when I met Aseer and his brothers, there was a part of me that celebrated the fact that he had family that loved him. Yes, you might have drama with the women and the mothers, but at least you have 2 younger brothers that love you. And even that, it's difficult because we've tried to be together, and for whatever reason, whether it be through a girlfriend that wasn't comfortable or whatever it was, we don't get to see each other as much as I know Aseer would like to, and as much as I want to at times. You know, there is no financial problems. There's nothing for them to not come out here and visit. But maybe they just want to work and not feel the weight. What I realize is sometimes people think that Aseer is heavy because he actually is intelligent. But he's extremely light and friendly and jovial to be around. But that's just only half the time. I'll have to say that the other half is very Saturnian. And those are moments that I felt to break away. Why? Because it's a responsibility being with someone who has purpose. But, you know, I'd rather be with someone with purpose than someone who doesn't know what they want to affect, what they want to do in life. So when I met someone with talent, with smarts and intelligence, with a historical understanding that everyone should sit down and hear like a bedtime story, what I chose to do was be of servitude, was be of support to it and to him, because it was bigger than me. So I say that to say some relationships are our responsibility, our work, are hard and toiling, and it's us to make the rainbows. It's us to bring the joy. And I have to remember that, because especially right now, there's so much pressure sometimes for people of color to to diversify their stock,
Conform.
to conform to the norm. And it's very hard. And I know that if we're going through this, then other people must. And I have to find out that my sister must be watching me, because she has surrounded herself around people that are almost the exact opposite archetype. So if I'm a black woman, she'll always be sitting next to a white woman, or sitting next to someone who could pass for white, or helping a baby that's the same age as my nephew, as her nephew that looks so much like our mother. She's more willing to help others than us and herself, because in helping herself would mean to have to admit to the lies that she's told herself about why I've been separate.
Yep.
I stopped chasing you because after I ran after you, you would shut the door on me. You would roll up the window. I'd tap your shoulder at the festival. Mika, give me a hug. I don't want to hug you. You're hurting me. You're hurting me. So I stopped. And she's the person, thank God, teacher. You're the one that taught me to not run, to not chase, to not fight, for people to love me and to see me for who I want to be seen as. Some people are going to not ever see who I am. So it's for me to tell these stories, because if I don't tell my version of the truth, who's to say that my son won't inherit all the karma of something I might carry the burden with me if I don't talk about it.
Right.
Nothing happened to us. She just doesn't want to admit the fact that she dropped the ball for a couple years. I was always by myself at times that I might not have been. But what I realize is that being by myself does not equate being alone. And when I do take time to really breathe through with yoga, to really study my own emotions, it's for a purpose. Sometimes solitude leads to great clarity. I chose not to be crazy by not entertaining the people that said I don't want to have anything to do with you. So it's been over 15 years that I've seen my own blood aunt